as well. Like, for me, that would even go back to like Green Berets with John Wayne.
Fighting soldiers from the sky. That's a good one.
And I'm thinking stuff like I'm thinking about stuff like Richard Gere and Officer and a Gentleman.
See, that was another good one, actually.
Top Gun.
Top Gun is amazing.
Yeah, so how did those not even hit that?
Unreal, because it's not. I don't
I don't know what they base that
So
on.
what do you say? Top 10 military movies of the 2000s.
Yeah. All right, so we're just sitting around here just kind of riffing, and we got on the topic of movies. All movie buffs, I think everyone in the military probably has used movies as an anchor to something.
Deployments.
Or even what got us in.
Yeah, as inspiration.
Good call.
Yeah. So we were talking, and we obviously we have to consult the internet on everything we do. So I just Googled, and IMDb popped up and said Dunkirk was number one. This is the top 10 movies of the 2010s.
Okay, so this is like global then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got Dunkirk, Hacksaw Ridge, American Sniper at 3, Fury at 4, Lone Survivor at 5, Incendies at 6, never seen that one. Tangerines at 7, never seen that one.
Some weird global people.
The Mountain 2 at 8, never seen that one. Bridge of Spies and Yuri the Surgical Strike.
Yeah, so you can scratch the last 14 that you named off.
That's right. That's right. It's got Zero Dark 30 at 13.
Yeah.
Les Mis.
Since 2010.
14. Yeah.
So,
All right, let's maybe what we do is we'll start first with the movies that influenced us to want to go into the military.
Ooh.
So for me, and I'll start off since I'm the old guy here. So my dad had served in the military 23 years, and if anybody knows my story, you go way back in one of the really early episodes, you'll hear probably more about my thing. But Vietnam, as a kid growing up, was actually still going on until I was probably 12 years old. And God, that just really showed my age right there. At any rate, the movies then that started influencing me was not just like the fact that many of my generations had gone in, but those things started telling a story that resonated, like Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Was one of the movies. Green Beret, most definitely. I wanted to go Green
Full Metal
Beret.
Jacket, when that come out?
Well, that was later. That was
while you were in there.
Yeah. And but there, like Green Beret back then, if you wanted to go into SF and the Army, you had to be at least an E4 with 2 years active service before you could go. So it wasn't like an entry 18 X-ray. That didn't come out into the GWAD days.
Yeah.
Till we started needing a larger force of special forces. So it was harder to attain because by that time frame, you've already done probably a PCS or about the PCS. It's harder to get things stable to where you can put in a packet in order to go and do those types of things. But at any rate, so going back, Apocalypse Now, the Green Beret, and then I'm trying to think of the third one, and that was, oh my God, I had it just a moment ago and it totally escaped me. But it was the movie where it was a bunch of guys that hung out together and they all end up going to Vietnam, and a couple of them got captured.
The Deer Hunter?
Deer Hunter.
Yeah, that's a heavy scene. Christopher Walken, Robert De Niro.
Very heavy movie. Yeah. And so those were kind of the movies that made me realize what I'm getting myself into, but I was also excited to get into it.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why I wanted to go into combat arms and stuff like that. So what were your guys?
I was going to say, it probably shaped the perception of what you thought the military was going to be like.
I knew it was going to be difficult. At least I was coming from my father in a rough life and everything at that point. I think I wanted even that strong discipline rather than running away from it. And I can even remember after graduating OSIT or near the end of it, I was one of the soldiers that got called in. I think the GO at most of the training installations at that time period would call like people in and say, what could we do better about our training? What did you feel about it? And I was the only person in the room that thought this was lot more easier than what I thought it was going to be, because a lot of people were complaining that they thought it was going to be really, they felt it was hard and challenging, but they're glad that, they made it and everything. And I thought this was a breeze. And it was because I was expecting things a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Having grown up in that environment.
I joined in 96. I think in the early 90s, I was blessed with like Navy movies, because that's when a lot of the Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide, which
Midway, I think it was.
Yeah.
Or was it Midway was the first one? That may have been later.
Yeah.
What was the one that was around 96? Black Hawk Down coming at that time frame?
Black Hawk Down came
a little bit later.
Yeah. A little bit later.
Okay.
So it was, I think maybe it did.
You mentioned
maybe
before
it was
this
96.
Officer and a Gentleman.
So yeah. I know Courage Under Fire was there. That wasn't too bad. A Few Good Men. Let me see. G.I. Jane.
You can't handle the
Hot Shots. No, you really didn't, I didn't really have, my influence came from the fact that my father was in the military in the United States Army when I joined. So that's where I got a lot of my influence from, just growing up on military installations and understanding the life. So I think it was less about the movies initially, more about the movies after the fact, which, kind of compare. I think we talked about comparison in another podcast where, another episode where you compare yourself to the things that are happening within the movies. The younger that I am, the more gee whiz it looked. The older that I am, and the longer I was in the military, the more I look at the movie and go, that never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you, though, how many times on this podcast episode movies have made an influence on their recruiting, because...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
One of the #1 movies that actually gets mentioned is SEALs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that might be on one of these lists.
Yeah.
That was one of the movies that most guys mentioned that the reason why they wanted to go
SEALs, right?
Yeah, with Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was in 1990.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. But it goes back to not understanding people. I mean, the military was an oddity. For you to know what was happening in the military, you had to be in the military.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot more transparent now.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other subject. But I mean, what brought you in?
My dad was, Vietnam era. So we watched a lot of kind of the same stuff you watched. Apocalypse Now. Probably watched Apocalypse Now way too young.
Yeah.
But then you have like flavorings, like, you ever seen the Tom Berenger movie Sniper?
Yeah.
So it's so corny, but like I love it. Forrest Gump, I think it kind of plays into
Rambo,
Top Gun.
Rambo, a little bit.
Top Gun was huge for me because I was younger.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of I didn't know what the Navy was like.
Yeah.
Navy has planes?
Yeah.
What?
Black Hawk Down was a big deal when I was a kid.
Huge.
It was a huge deal when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then, but after every war, it kind of shifts and you get the corny ones early. Like, I love the movie The Hurt Locker, but EOD's not like toting 50s and pointing at people and stuff like that. Like, and I think it won an Academy Award, if I wasn't mistaken. It's a great movie, but it's definitely something where you're like, not going to happen. That's not true. That kind of stuff. So
we'll get into realism later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are probably my biggest influences are Vietnam era movies. It's like we were singing the song from the Green Berets before we came on.
Full Metal Jacket was
Full Metal Jacket is the greatest half of a movie ever.
The first half.
The first half is the greatest half of a movie ever.
That's the only time. That's like when I say Full Metal Jacket.
The rest of it. Yeah.
I was telling him about the scene where they're in the Huey, and they're flying over the rice fields.
Yeah.
And he's asking them, how do you shoot the women and children?
Yeah.
Just don't lead them as much.
Yeah.
Like 99% of the population will never understand what he was talking about.
Yeah.
But if you're a Bradley gunner, you know exactly what lead is.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get that reference. But you're absolutely right. It's that first half is, I think, I saw it before I went to basic training. That probably had the largest mental influence on me because my expectation going into basic was like scrubbing tile floors with a toothbrush and bathroom stalls without walls and I just, I was like, oh man, this is really gonna suck. But then we had Disney Berets.
Yeah.
Disney Barracks at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
as we digress.
So we kind of spoke about realism.
Yeah.
No one is saying that any of these things are very realistic, right? We're getting to a point now where we can recognize things and we can take, little minutia points from movies like that could actually happen.
Yeah.
That means something.
Well, you brought up a good point with talking about, was it Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah. Where Tom Hanks pulls out a compass and, like a good ranger, his compass is tied down. I'm sure it had an inline bowling in it. Like, dummy corded. Like, I mean, that was big.
Yeah.
Other things like the gunner commands from Fury.
Yeah.
Now, like, I was like, okay, like Shia did a little work on that.
Yeah.
Like, they did a little work on that. That was obviously, Fury is not, I wouldn't say it's not possible, but it's definitely like stylized and played up a little bit. But there's little things that come from that you can see that they made an effort there.
Yeah.
What pisses us off the most was, and we kind of talked about this before, is when there's no effort whatsoever.
Or there's either not a military advisor that's on set that helped them out with uniforms and military, discipline and protocol and everything. But sometimes I wonder if they chose the wrong branch, because you could tell, like, a Marine would come walking in the door, looks like sharp as hell, but the Army guy doesn't look right, or the Navy guy, and it's like, or not, maybe not Navy, somebody, Air Force or something like that. So it's like, okay, you must have had a Marine then on set, but didn't know anything about the right protocol of wearing the beret properly and shaping it and shaving it and taking out the liner and the whole things that are important.
You know what's funny?
And it looks like a chef's hat. Yeah.
Well, and you talk about the Marines, the Navy. I mean, even the Navy and their whites and all that stuff. When I see it, I'm like, oh, I see nothing wrong. It's because I've never been in the Navy.
Yeah.
But you'll get somebody that's been in the Navy. It's like, that looks stupid.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with the Army for us, I believe. But I think it's more prevalent because it seems to show more Army uniforms. When you look at the shows, there's a lot more. I hate looking at a rack and then seeing like the National Defense Medals at the top or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they've got like
Sweet.
6 across.
Well, why is your Bronze Star underneath your Good Conduct Medal?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Or they'll have stuff around the name tag on the wrong side of the uniform. And it's
and don't fact check me on this one because I'm kind of talking out of my fourth point of contact, but I've been told that there's some regulation out there to where it can't be matchy. Yeah, you can't match it 100%. So there's got to be like, and this is where, don't quote me on this, it's like 1 or 2 things have to be off.
I have never heard that before, Sean.
But it doesn't have to be that much. We don't need the Chef Boyardee douchebag hat.
No. I mean, it's the uniforms with the UCP pattern, right. And it had the
Velcro.
Oh, yeah. So you still see a lot of the photos where they Velcro.
Yeah, and they Velcro it and it's there, and they've got the flat rim hat. And,
yeah.
You know what movie I love? Did you ever see the movie Red Platoon about Keating?
I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there was one thing that Orlando Bloom did in that movie, and I thought it was awesome. He was the captain. He was a troop commander that got killed. But he brought all his leaders in, and they were talking over him, and then he tapped his rank and said, "Is this thing on?" And I was like, "Okay, I've seen troop commanders do that before."
We've seen this one.
Yeah, like, is that broken? I can't.
They play rock, paper, rank.
Yeah.
They play peekaboo.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to play this game. I'm going to count to 3, and then you're just going to lift your hand off your rank. Ready? 1, 2. I win. That's happened many times.
Yeah.
So I can see that.
I feel like, when you're a kid and you're watching these types of shows and stuff, maybe they don't have the negative impact, or they have a positive impact on you and such. And maybe it's because we're just now getting old and we start watching these shows and we're like, oh man, not another military movie where they're not wearing their shit right.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I just feel like there was a lot more effort placed into movies way back when. Like, when you're watching Green Berets with John Wayne, it just looked like everybody was straight. if you even go back to the days of black and white television when it became colorized, and you watch Gomer Pyle, USMC, and reruns and stuff, and you look at his uniforms, the guy must, he's goofy as all get out, but the uniforms, everything they did was right.
Yeah.
So, when it's done right, I think, to me, it just has a more positive impact. And when it doesn't, then it just kind of loses some of the shine. And I don't know that it really has and plays that much of an impact. I could be wrong.
I 100% agree with you. I think it lends to, I think it takes away from the storyline, the movie, if you want to take it seriously, you want to try to match it. I mean, that's why you would get an advisor on this. I've never been an advisor on a movie set, but I would assume that's why you want one, is because you want your movie to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
From a financial standpoint, you're paying some person to be on your set to tell you, hey, this is the way it needs to go. This is how they should move. Hey, he's ready, looks kind of jacked up, right? All these different aspects of it. You don't want your movie to show up and have everybody not pay attention to the storyline because the beret looked like smashed ass. Like, you just don't.
Uniform stuff aside, like seeing somebody flag somebody in a movie, you're getting your ass kicked when you get back.
Also, that happens in real life.
Yes,
but not at like tier 1, tier 2.
Not as egregious as it.
I think probably one of the most realistic I appreciated, as far as like maneuvering and communication and like the realism, was Zero Dark 30, when they actually got to the compound and they're trying to enter, and a plan never survives initial contact.
Yeah,
and that was to a T, right? Yeah. They brought that in to a T, and I loved it. It's because everybody puts our tier 1, tier 2 folks on a pedestal, and for good reason, because they do amazing things. But I had a buddy that was, CAG, that told me, you know why we have all that green stuff around our fence? I don't know. He's like, because we're just as jacked up as you are. We just don't want people to see it. Obviously he was joking, but he was being realistic, right? I liked it because it had some realism to it. The pace that they were moving and the way that they were moving, and even with the advanced night vision they had that has depth, they still moved as if they were in the dark. It wasn't like this super fast, right, where they're filming in light, but they make it dark.
Ooh, how about convoy ops in movies where they're bumper to bumper?
Oh, Sicario did that.
And they're not traveling over watch, they're just traveling. Like, what are we doing here?
So Sicario did that, but I appreciated it because it actually kind of reminded me of some of the convoy stuff that we did when you knew you were about to hit contact, right? Yeah. But the other ones are not. Yeah, they're not
doing that for any reason other than that's what they think.
Same thing with like CQB. It doesn't matter whether you're watching a show that's about like a bunch of cops and stuff like that, or you're one of these shows about CIA agents or whatever those types of shows. You can tell when those people the actors actually went through proper training. When they come in and breach the door and they walk in, and
they did that with Black Hawk Down.
They're holding the weapon and everything.
I think for Black Hawk Down, I want to say I watched the extra. Like I bought the cool DVD set.
Yeah.
And they were doing glass rooms, and they had the engineer tape on the grass.
Yeah.
But that's when the bad boys, the Rangers, were the high and tights and the rolled, and that was Woodland Camo days. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And they learn how to shoot. The Keanu Reeves of the world, right?
Yeah.
Made a huge difference, though, into the realism of the show. And so to me, when you add that kind of realism, let's face it, the DOD is getting involved in some of these things because it is a recruiting opportunity for, yeah, absolutely. And we are, some are just now learning, but the DOD has always funded a lot of Hollywood anyway to be able to either use in psychological operations, I'm sure, or in the case of, providing it as a recruiting tool. So when they display these things in the proper way, and it looks like sharp, and you do it right, and you wear the uniform right and everything, then I think it just really looks something about it. It looks like right.
Yeah.
When you don't, and it looks all suit and everything, then to me, it looks like, is that something you really want to belong to? And again, maybe I'm looking at it with a lens as the old guy, but I just felt like as a kid or whatever, if I were watching that and it just didn't look right, I'd be wondering like, is that really real?
I think I agree with you. I think all of us are a little more hypersensitive to
super.
it.
Yeah.
So
I was the guy that would go to the mall and be shopping with my family, and my family would be pulling me away because I'd see somebody out of uniform or not supposed to be wearing that uniform in the mall, and be the one that would go over to them and introduce myself.
Yeah.
And so I do that now on movies, even though I can't talk to the person.
Yeah.
But I'm talking to them, make no mistake about it.
yeah, I was a lot worse when I say in.
Yeah.
I think I was a lot worse as a first sergeant watching movies.
Yeah.
I wasn't 100% correct with my uniform all the time. I don't think anybody ever is, but that
Come on, Sean, I was. So.
Yeah. Okay. Brown noser. But that doesn't preclude me from looking at a movie and going, man, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think to a smart potential recruit, they look at a movie that just doesn't lend to realism and they just go, no, I don't want to do it no more.
Yeah, if you're a recruit, I need you to go watch the movie Jarhead. Not for the realism. There's one real part of that entire movie. He gets in trouble for drinking downrange, and then what is his detail after that? He has to burn shit.
Yeah, no, that's realistic.
Yeah, let that be.
It's either that one or move rocks from over here.
Sorry, 107 Foundation.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Then you got to get on the burn pit.
There you go.
Burn pit registry.
Yeah. Disclaimer out. We Were Soldiers. When did that come out?
Oh, that was like 03, 04.
Yeah.
Like that.
So if you think about We Were Soldiers, based off the book We Were Soldiers, Once and Young, it's a mandatory read for anybody that was going into 1st Squadron, 7th U.S. Cavalry, Gary Owen, right? In the 1st Cav Division when it was still a Div Cav organization. Yeah. So that movie comes out. I'm actually in 1-7 Cav. Amazing. The cast shows up. We actually had Hal Moore, Sergeant Major Plumley showed up. I think the reporter showed up also. The one that went to LZ X-ray with him. Anyway, so that movie comes out, and I don't know anything about Vietnam other than what, my father tells me, what other Vietnam vets tell me, and then what you see in the movies and documentaries. I'm going to say that looked pretty real, right? Some of the stuff that was going on.
There were reports that like vets walked, like same with the landing scene at Normandy and Saving Private Ryan, but like
that was intense.
People that were there walked out like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And
tough.
some guys said the only thing they were missing was the smell of napalm and diesel fuel, and that movie would have been perfect.
Right. And that's attention to detail.
But they probably got that anyway by watching.
Yeah.
So my mother had to walk out.
Yeah.
My mother walked out of We Were Soldiers.
Yeah.
Because correlation to 1-7, knowing that I was getting ready to get deployed, and just too much, like sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, she'd been a military spouse for, a couple of decades already. So I think as a movie maker, as bad as it sounds, that's the result you want, is somebody to go, wow, that's realistic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that beach scene, man. I mean, you could hear the bullets.
Oh, Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can hear the bullets and if you've ever been shot at,
you know exactly what it sounds like.
Exactly what it was. And God bless if you have surround sound at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got the 2 speakers back here, and my wife and I look, if the audio's good, we'll look. You hear that? Oh, that's just our stereo. Yeah. So that's amazing. So now I'm focused. I'm hyper focused on the movie itself.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pick it apart. You already sold me. I'm here for it. Mm-hmm. Right. So to your point, I think you could probably establish relevance at the beginning of the movie by showing some sort of effort in being genuine. And then the rest of the movie, people are just going to be, pulled in.
Yeah.
I mentioned Sicario before. I'm not law enforcement. my parents were both law enforcement before my dad went in the Army. My son is law enforcement. He's done a lot of the tactical stuff, and he's been through all the schools. He's law enforcement with the Marines. I'm sure they could speak a little more intelligently on the authenticity of stuff like that. But just military and looking at maneuvering and weapons posture and the way that they talk to each other. Old boy with the glasses was with him. He reminds me of Walrod.
Yeah.
Right? His attitude, very dry humor. You got to be pretty intelligent to understand what's coming out of his mouth, if he's joking or not.
Yeah.
I can relate to stuff like that. That's realistic.
Yeah.
Their childish banter is very realistic.
Yes.
So I'll giggle when they're talking about stuff. Plus the way they carry their weapons. The one piece of that movie I didn't like is when the CAG dudes were in the hotel room. It was like, okay, boys, weapons check.
Yeah.
Like, all right, Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
We're not doing a weapons check inside the Motel 6.
Or in what is it? Not Saving Private Ryan. Black Hawk Down, when they're making fun of the Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
It's like, that's exactly what happens when you get a bunch of soldiers.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Or the kid had for the commander. All that was,
that was the commander. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He had the piece of tape for the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I actually look forward to hearing or seeing in the comments the movie. I'd like to see the people who listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Put the movie that influenced them to come and join, if there was one.
And then the one that pisses you off the most.
And then the one that pisses you off the most. And that would be very curious to see what those are, because some of those movies that pisses you off may actually be movies that we all love, but yet they did some things that just like really drove some people crazy.
Yeah.
And if the movie that pissed you off the most is somebody else's movie that's like their favorite that brought them in, let's not get into a piss and match on. So before we go then, what's your favorite movie, all things considered?
Oh,
military speaking, all things considered.
I would have to say Saving Private Ryan.
I say Hot Shots doesn't count. Rambo doesn't count.
As far as military movies, it would have to
Stripes doesn't count.
Black Hawk Down or Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I think those two.
So
both of those were so intense.
Mm-hmm. Saving Private Ryan across the board for everything was absolutely amazing. I think it just keeps you in. So I'll go with that. Non-military but still tactical. I don't know anything about the CIA, but like Zero Dark 30.
Yeah.
Was it 13 Hours?
13 Hours, yeah.
That movie had me, like, it was intense. Because there's aspects of it that you may or may not be able to relate to. You may not have been inside of a building as you're, got a whole bunch of people attacking you, but there's a lot of people out there that have experienced stuff like that can, relate to a feeling that's congruent to what they're going through.
Yeah.
So those kind of movies for me were realistic. I'll watch them over and over again, find something new about it.
Yeah. So looking forward to you guys putting your comments in there. Make sure you do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Top Gun was Brandon's, by the way. He said he liked the volleyball scene the most. He said commissioned officers with dog tags and jeans as they glisten in the sun with athletic tape around their wrists was the most authentic thing he's ever seen.
His second one was Topper Gun with a football scene.
And then my third favorite.
Well, Saving Private Ryan.
My third favorite was Top Whisk Gun.
And we're out.
And we're gone. Thanks, guys.